Welcome to another edition of From the Press Box, here every Monday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., talking sports. My name is Rob Leonard. Joining me, of course, is my brother and award-winning sports writer, Tim Leonard. Hello, Timothy. How you doing?
Good morning, brother. Doing well. How are you?
Doing okay. As always, even though there's no games technically going on, there's a lot of chat going on concerning lots of sports. Let's start off with the one that I thought was going to be taken care of, and if I was a betting man, I would bet against it now. I'm talking about Major League Baseball. The talk was they were hoping to get things started by July 4th, and that looks like it's not going to happen. The league wants one thing, the players want another, and they're not helping each other out at all, are they?
Well, when do they help each other out, brother? It's all we've seen from the latest round of, I don't even want to call it negotiations, because I really don't think they're negotiating. But all we've seen from the latest chapter in the history between the Major League Baseball Players Association and the owners is just how much they don't trust each other, and how much of an enormous lack of trust there is. For whatever reason, the owners they're not seeing the big picture, I don't think. And I mean, we obviously have talked about this as it's been going on, but I am of the mindset that if the owners really wanted to get something done here, they would. And that for whatever reason they are, or they have become so short-sighted that they're not looking at the greater good of the game and the bigger picture. And they want this to be yet another victory in all of the negotiations that they've had with the Players Association. That's a very dangerous thing, because you have Commissioner Rob Manfred the other day before the Major League Baseball player draft started. He said there 100% there would be baseball this season. That was his quote, was quote 100%. So to make that kind of statement when you really don't have anything good going, there's no back and forth between the players and the owners. You know, the owners come up with a proposal to the players and say, this is what we want to do. And the players don't even respond with a proposal. They just say, no, that's crazy, and just comment about how dead in the water the talks are again. Then a couple days later, the players will come back with a proposal and talk about how fair it is and how, willing to play ball they are, and they're ready to go. And then the owners will say, no, that has nothing to do with anything with the framework of the plan that we came up with. And then we're back to square one all over again, where they're making accusations at each other, and nobody's coming out ahead. And the people that they really should worry about coming out ahead are the fans, and neither side is worried about the fans at all. And that just disgusts me.
One thing, brother, that gets me is it seems like the MLB people want approximately 72 games, while the union wants about 89. So if you cut that in half, it's about an 80-game season, which is basically half a season, which is basically what you would want at this point in the whole thing. The fact that they're going to be playing Florida anyway, it's not like
that's the baseball plan is to play in individual stadiums. It's not to play in Florida.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was confusing them.
Yeah.
But anyway, they could still take care of this. I mean, the game thing is pretty close, so I'm not sure why they just can't say, okay, here, we're going to cut this in half, and that's what we get. With the percentage of full pay compared to other amounts of money, the players have to realize, hey, it's a half season. Maybe I don't get my full salary, and the league has to realize, well, at least we're having a season, and we're still going to get that TV money, which is what they want. I mean, that's where they make their money. Of course, obviously, a $7 hot dog or a $9 hot dog, whatever, and a $25 beer also pays for the bills too. But at this moment, it's the TV money that keeps them in business. So I'm not sure why.
And will keep them in business for this season specifically.
Yes, for this season, they just signed a contract with TBS, and TBS basically does a Saturday or Sunday game, and then they do a pretty intense playoff coverage, actually, considering they're not like ESPN where they have games all the time. So, and that contract was a very good contract, and also the teams want to end it at the end of September. The union wants to go to mid-October. I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to go to mid-October. If you go to the end of September, then all the TV stuff that's already set up, where okay, we know we have these games on these dates, stays the same, and that's probably what they're doing. They're probably listening either to the TV guys, or they're saying, "Hey, TV guys, don't worry, we're going to make sure this works."
Let me just cut in here for a moment, brother. The league has been pretty consistent in saying that it wants the regular season to end on September 27th because they are concerned about the second wave that continues to be predicted by the CDC, and they don't want to be in a position where a second wave of COVID-19 winds up short-circuiting their season right as it's about to end. So they're looking at this, and the second wave has been predicted for October, November, which is why Major League Baseball wants to be able to be done with the regular season. September 27th has been their date consistently, and then play a couple rounds of playoffs. But once they start playing playoffs, then obviously there are far fewer teams, and the health factor in all of this becomes maybe less of a concern in a lot of ways, just because the sheer numbers won't be as much. But that's the main concern, and also the TV partners don't want to have games extending into November, as has been the case for the last couple seasons with baseball. Because you're going to have a presidential election in November, you're going to have football in November, and they don't want baseball being something else that they have to cover in what they anticipate will be a very busy television landscape. So they want the season to be done by mid-October.
Well, I have no doubts about that. I mean, but at the same time, it's a little special, weird season. So if you would, I'm sure if the networks were told, we can go another week. Okay. I don't think
they don't want to. I mean, that's part of when baseball.
But part of it, brother, is that Fox. It's going to Fox Baseball. There's nothing on ABC or NBC or CBS. So those are the ones who cover the election. So Fox doesn't really do over the air.
Fox covers it too, but I'd obviously much rather see baseball on Fox than election coverage. So
yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying. I mean, an extra 2 weeks, I don't think would hurt it, but I guess it does in the eyes of the owners. And the owners, brother, some of these owners have been very loudly talking about that. They might not even mind if the season ended because they wouldn't lose as much money. They keep talking about now how much money they lose owning a team. And, this is where I say to myself, you know what, these guys are full of crap. Because for the most part, if you got a successful team, there are three parts of the triangle. You got the team itself. There's ownership of the stadium or a really good deal with the stadium, depending if the town owns it. And the third one is there's a local sports network that either you part own or you own all the way. And they're three separate things, but they all the money goes in the same pocket. So to me, they talk about, it costs a lot of money. Well, yeah, if you just base it on owning a team, but if you also include the money from the stadium and the TV deals, then it becomes, okay, you know what? I don't have to worry about anything. So I wish the owners would stop talking about this. Maybe Kansas City doesn't have the best deal in the world, but the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers and Atlanta. Atlanta is owned by Liberty Media. They're the only publicly held team in baseball. Liberty Media is a big, television /radio company owned by John Malone. and they have to put everything into their paperwork for the SEC. So you find out how much money they really make. And they own the stadium, and I'm not sure they own the television network, but they own the 2 of the 3. And they're not losing money. John Malone doesn't lose money. So
right, but this all becomes part of the problem, because the Players Association has been asking the owners for financial disclosures, and the owners apparently didn't disclose this new contract that they have with TBS, and that it gives them a significant bump in money from
right.
the previous deal. So the players already know and already have obviously a major issue with the fact that the owners are trying to pull a fast one on them. And this is what happens with every negotiation with the Players Association and the owners. The problem is we don't have the time for it now. Every day that passes by, first of all, Major League Baseball wanted to start on July 4th. At this point, there's absolutely no chance of that happening.
Nope.
Every day that goes by means that baseball is losing its chance to be that hero sport that came back first, which they're not going to be able to do anyway now at this point. But and they're losing goodwill with the fans, because again, I mean, we're looking at it, today is June 15th. You're looking at minimum a month from the day that they say, okay, let's get everybody together. Well, you still need a 3-week spring training. You still need to get players down to Florida. There's going to be some manner of quarantine period once they get there. Plus, Florida is one of the places right now where there's the case numbers are spiking and hospitalizations are going up.
Yep.
So now you're bringing players into that scenario with their idiot governor, and everybody just going out to the beach, and there's no social distancing, and people don't feel like wearing masks, and they're doing basically as little as possible to prevent the spread of the virus down in Florida. So that's where you're bringing players. So that's another issue. And if several players wind up catching this thing, then what happens to your season? So basically, baseball at this point, there was apparently some language in the agreement that the players and the owners reached in March about the prorated salaries. I think that Rob Manfred, to me, and this is just my opinion, but he seems perfectly happy with the idea of a 50-game schedule and to play as few games as possible, because this way the owners will rake in some enough of their regular season television money. They'll get more playoff money, because apparently the players agreed to this extra round of playoffs. So that will be something that they can sell and make more money on, because obviously networks will pay more for those important games. And that's going to be the owner's way of quote unquote salvaging the season. Now the players want to play more games, because the more games they play, the more money they make. And the owners seem to be totally the opposite of it. You would think owners would want to play as many games as possible, but apparently they don't. And that's what I'm getting from these negotiations and reading all of these proposals going back and forth to keep getting rejected as this quote unquote negotiation slogs onto nowhere.
Right, but you're right about the fact that they make their money from the playoffs.
Right.
So it's not like the NFL where the whole season counts, because the national games, not always are exclusive. So they only make so much money on it. So it's I can see where the owners could say, hey, 50 games is enough. We're this season's over with anyway. Let's get something. We're not going to make any money from playing the games in our stadiums. So let's make it a loss leader and worry about next year. And, next year they could always start the games in May if they don't have a cure by next year. At least they have an idea where to go with it, which, I think is what's going to happen. I think they're going to figure out I don't think they're going to do 50. I don't think they're going to do 80, 89. I mean, to me, it would be, 80 games at the most, but I think it's going to be less than that. And then they'll work it from there. And yeah, okay, it wasn't the best year for the players, but I'm sure they'll remember it for the next time they negotiate.
Yeah, but here's the issue, brother, and here's the issue that isn't really being discussed very much. What if this whole thing with a vaccine, a cure, whatever, either or both, what if it takes more than a year? What if we get into March next year in 2021 and we're still looking at this, and now we've gotten through the second wave and all that in November, and the NBA season is now they're looking at the possibility of that not even happening, and all of a sudden we're back at baseball looking at spring training and what are we doing, and oh my, are we going to have a season? I mean, that we can't just assume that this is going to be in place by the end. We don't know. Well,
we should call.
But everything that happens now affects a year from now.
Yeah, because, but at the same time, Tim, I personally think they're not worried about next year right now because
they can't. Though.
But you can't be, because you got to figure out what's in front of you first. Because if they were worried about next year, they would just cancel the season.
Well, then maybe that's what they should do, because the problem that I'm having with them not thinking about the big picture is right now they're doing damage to the game.
But that doesn't matter. If they cancel the season, they've done enough damage as it is.
Well, then you can always spin something in terms of that. But for whatever they're doing now and all of this negotiation that's going on and all of the venom that's being spewed back and forth, it's not doing any good.
Right, brother. But I think they're looking in front of them right now. They're not. I don't think anyone's worried.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You don't have to say it again. I get what you're saying. But it's stupid thinking.
It is stupid thinking.
It's short-sighted. It's not big picture. There's nothing beneficial. Either tell them like Manfred said. If part of that agreement that they made was that the owners, this was the one that the players rejected on Saturday, 70 of the full prorated pay guaranteed. And the total amount of money that would go to the players is $5 billion, which is that the owners have offered thus far, but is still less than what the players are seeking. So
right.
in those terms, that's the issue. And 72 games, then that number is just going to keep going down. So the players rejected that proposal, and Tony Clark, the Players Association executive director, all he said, this is a quote: "Further dialogue with the league would be futile. It's time to get back to work. Tell us where and when." And the Players Association said, "Look, we want to know where and when we need to be by the end of the day today." So the owners, they've basically put this all in the owner's lap and said, "Look, the negotiations aren't working. We understand they're not working. So tell us how many games you want to play this season and do it by the end of business today. Tell us where to be and let's get going." And I agree that's a brilliant negotiating tactic. But why did it take so long to get there?
Because people were fighting over this, Tim. I think what you might find, Timmy, with this whole thing, and it's not just going to be baseball next year, or it's going to be all sports, where they're going to change the beginning and the end of the season. So you're not going to start basketball in October. You might start it in February. And yes, it's going to affect a lot of things, but that might be the only way to do it if there is a cure. Now, let's say that, I haven't heard Dr. Fauci talk about a third wave.
I haven't heard Fauci say anything in weeks.
Yeah, he got pushed out of the circle. But what I'm saying is, brother, if there's a second wave in October, we're not just talking baseball. We're talking football. We're talking every other sport, really, is going to be affected by that. So
football especially, because football, to me, as far as I know with football, they haven't really come up with a plan as far as isolation goes. Like the NBA and the NHL are talking about, and even baseball to a lesser extent are talking about basically putting their players in bubbles.
and that's okay.
Having them away from their families and having them isolated as much as possible. So that would put the focus on making sure that COVID-19 doesn't run rampant through teams and rosters. But the reality of that is, I'm sorry, I just think there's too many athletes who are irresponsible and selfish, and let's face it, they've been like that for several years. But I don't really see that working. Somebody is going to be the jerk and want to go out, and he's going to feel deprived because he can't see his groupies in the bars, and somebody's going to wind up going out, and then he's going to pick it up and he's going to wind up spreading it to somebody else, and then all of a sudden we're going to have a half a dozen guys on a team get it, and then we're really going to see what's going to happen.
Well, and then like I said, the whole season has Major League Baseball, and I guess the other teams also, have they talked about expanding the roster? So
the last thing that I heard, and this wasn't official, but during the draft on Wednesday and Thursday, I saw the number of 50-man roster. I saw that number floated around a couple of times. I haven't seen anything official from that, but that startled me when I saw them. I heard them using the term, and I saw it, in a graphic somewhere that said 50-man roster. And I was like, where did that come from?
If a player gets sick, they can say, okay, you go sit in the corner, and we have another guy who take your place.
I get that, but at what point does the integrity of the game? If you're talking about a 50-man roster, first of all, that's double what your usual roster is for a Major League Baseball game. It's 10 more than the normal protected roster.
Right.
Usually with baseball, it's a 40-man roster in terms of players who are available to your major league team. If you have a minor leaguer who is your up and coming star, if he can't play for the major league team until he's put on the 40-man roster.
Right.
So now you're talking about making it a 50-man roster.
But it'd be actually good for some players because they'd get major league credits.
They'd get major league money.
And think about, Tim, how many AAA teams are actually pretty damn good. And, the only reason they're playing in the AAA is because there's just no room in Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
so
and there's that's a small number of players, but it does exist. I can't say it doesn't. But my issue, first, and the other thing I think you have to remember is with 50-man rosters, I think probably what would wind up happening, and again, this is my own guesswork here. I think that what they probably would do is have a 28-man roster, like a game day roster.
Right.
It's like with what football does, and who's a healthy, like even hockey too. Who's the healthy scratch, and it would be like you're not going to see 50 players all dressed and
but you'd have 50 players available.
So that when a pitcher, like a starting pitcher in that day's game, chances are he might wind up being off the roster the next day, so they can add another couple of relief pitchers. Right. But if that's the case, is that going to affect service time? And that's probably some of the things that are being negotiated right now, is how that would work. But that's it. Again, it's kind of it's important to the players, obviously, because it affects how they get paid in the future. But in terms of getting the season started, in my opinion, it's just minutia at this point. I mean, they need to work all this stuff out, and they need to say, all right, yes, we're willing to give you this, but you need to be able to, you need to be willing to give us something else, and we need to work this out and get it done.
Yeah,
they're not doing that right now. They just keep submitting ideas. The owners are submitting ideas that are better for them. Players are submitting proposals that are better for them, and there's no negotiation. Nobody's looking to get to a middle ground. They all just want to get a deal that's best for themselves. That's not. Well,
you don't want the season not to happen and then not get paid. So that's part of it. And also, if it was 50 players per team, and let's say you had a sitting bench of 30, and the 20 players are still given major league service time, then you know what? That's pretty darn good. It's not perfect. This is not going to be perfect. And when the season ends in October, hopefully they've figured out what's going to happen for next season. And and the other questions I just asked it: is there a third wave, or is it just two waves? If it's a third wave after that, then there might not be sports forever. Because the way things are going, there's no guarantee of any cure for this.
No, I mean that's what I said before. Until the medical community either comes up with A, a vaccine, or B, some sort of a cure, then this is the new normal for the next year or two or whatever. I mean this is what we have to accept.
What could happen is we can get a new president who maybe cares a little more about this stuff.
Well,
and
that would be a nice thing, because then we'd have somebody who actually takes science seriously.
Well, that's something, brother. That's whoever wins the presidency is going to affect us also. So
of course, but that's nothing from that is going to impact anything until January.
No, I agree.
Unless if Trump somehow wins again, then it'll just be more of the same crap that we're trying to swim through, and
right. Anyway, you're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. The show you're listening to is From the Press Box. My name is Rob Leonard. He is Tim Leonard. The show is here every Monday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., and the show becomes a podcast later on at Spreaker.com, among other places. You just look your normal places, you'll find it. But we started Spreaker, so we mentioned Spreaker. We are part of the WHPC Sports Talk family, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Sports Talk, and every Tuesday, 10 p.m. to midnight. Now, brother, I know you were very happy about this, and I actually have to say the Major League Baseball draft is not something I cared about.
You love the draft, brother.
Let me finish, brother. One thing about it was it gave eyeballs basically to see some of these players that you would normally not see, because it's not, well, maybe it is now, but it's not something, because there's no programming at all. People probably tuned in that maybe they wouldn't have tuned in concerning the draft. And there's, you know what? You see the packages, because they all get packages done about them, and you're like, okay, this guy's a good player. Maybe he will help out the Mets or the Yankees or whoever team who signs him up. So I as much as I'm not a fan of this, because no one follows college baseball or soccer the way they do college basketball and football. It was nice to see it on the television as part of programming, because they need programming.
Yeah, so, I enjoyed watching the draft. Because I am a dedicated rotisserie player, I tend to know more about these guys because I study them, and a lot of them I just study for the draft because I'm looking to see at some point somebody who was drafted on Wednesday will be part of my team. The 3-time champion, the Schwammies.
Of course, brother. Everyone's scared of your team as a.
That's true.
Rotisserie champion.
But the draft, maybe there probably were more eyeballs on it, because usually in normal times the people are watching baseball games as opposed to watching the draft. So the draft was on started Wednesday at 7:00. Your New York Metropolitans selected a California high school center fielder by the name of Pete Crow Armstrong at number 19. Mr. Crow Armstrong is a center fielder and supposedly among the best defensive players in the draft this season. The scouts say that he probably could play center field on a defensive level in the major leagues right now. Now, this is a kid who's 18 years old. And he's that good defensively. I know the Mets would love to have a legitimate center fielder this season, but let's face it, Mr. Crow Armstrong is likely not ready for the major leagues for at least another 4 years, which would make him 22 at that point. So, he is a guy who is seen as a leadoff hitter type. I don't know how much speed he has per se. He's certainly no Ricky Henderson in that regard, but decent speed. Has drawn comparisons to Yankees veteran Brett Gardner. Probably not last season's Brett Gardner when he hit 22 home runs, I think it was. I think you're looking at a guy who's probably going to be more in the neighborhood of 15 home runs.
Okay.
And it's a good pick. It's certainly not a sexy pick in terms of, we could see this guy hitting 40 home runs and he's going to slug for us. This is a guy who, if you look for strength up the middle, and a lot of GMs, that's how they view the draft. This kid is a good pick because he's going to give you, like I said, elite level defense. The bat plays. It's not a great bat, but it's certainly not a bad bat. And this is a guy who, like I said, 4 years, 5 years, or whatever. This guy should be your starting center fielder. And if he's not, then that means something went wrong somewhere along the way. And also, fun fact about Pete Crow Armstrong, brother. His mom was in the movie Little Big League. You remember that when the kid becomes the manager of the Minnesota Twins?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
she plays the manager's mom, the little kid's mom.
I didn't know that.
I remember her. Good looking. I liked it.
Okay.
Anyway, second round, the Mets took a right-hander by the name of J.T. Ginn, a draft-eligible sophomore from Mississippi State. Ginn was looked at as seen as a potential top 10 pick before the season started, but then the season did start, and Ginn wound up needing Tommy John surgery. So he's done for the next year. But the Mets took him in the second round. This is a pick with some tremendous upside. And assuming they get him signed and if they can get him signed, because Ginn, I know, was probably looking for a lot more money than what a second round pick will get. It wouldn't surprise me if the Mets give him a little bit more of a bonus and maybe take a little bit from Mr. Crow Armstrong and try to balance it out that way. But assuming Ginn recovers well from the Tommy John surgery, he could wind up giving the Mets 2 first round talents, and actually could even wind up having a better career than Crow Armstrong. Ginn he's a phenomenal arm, and it clearly dropped because of the surgery that he needed and the year-long rehab. But I tell you what, I got to give Brody Van Wagenen credit. He is an unorthodox GM for sure, but in 2 years with the Mets, he's had 2 good drafts.
Okay,
and I got to give him credit for that, because I don't give him credit for much else, because I still don't think he's a very good GM. But he has done the draft well, and I think the Mets should be happy about the players that they brought in. Not just the third round pick that they made is actually another Brett Gardner center field type. So, I don't know how that's going to play in terms of overlap in the system, but they'll figure it out. They always figure these things out. The New York Yankees, on the other hand, selected a catcher out of Arizona by the name of Austin Wells with the 28th pick in the first round.
No relation to David, right?
No relation to David. The only thing they have in common is that they're both left-handed and both somewhat beefy human beings.
They both like their alcohol.
Well, I'm not going to say that. Wells I don't think is even 21 yet. The one that they picked, Austin. But this Wells, he's all about the bat. Very few predict that he will stick at catcher. But he is enough of an athlete that he can play outfield or first base. And if he gives you some versatility, like he can be a backup catcher on some days and then play in the outfield or do something else, then that's great. I mean, but he even said his quote, and I love the quote because I love the confidence from it, was, "I'll just hit home runs at Yankee Stadium and they can play me wherever they need me." So you love seeing a quote like that. I love seeing a good quote. Like that anyway. So the comparisons for Austin Wells have been Kyle Schwarber of the Cubs, the original Schwa, the former Schwami, Kyle Schwarber. And that's certainly not a bad thing, because Kyle Schwarber is a legitimate power hitter in the major leagues. The thing that made me wonder is that the Yankees picked catchers in the first and second rounds of the 2018 draft. So it's going to be a little crowded behind the plate in the Yankee system. But again, like I said with the Mets, these things kind of have a way of working themselves out. And also it makes me wonder, what does this have any impact on the future Gary Sanchez? when he's eligible to become a free agent? Do the Yankees sign him, or do they say, hey, you know what, we got all these great hitting catchers in our system now. We don't need to spend $25 million a year on El Gary, who let's face it, the Yankees aren't thrilled about his attitude, from the last couple of seasons. And unless that improves significantly and he becomes more like a 300 hitter like they thought he was going to be, I could certainly see them letting him walk, even though El Gary is regarded as probably one of the top 4 or 5 catchers in all of baseball.
Right. Well, but that's why you have a draft. That's
why you have a draft.
You see what's coming down the pike.
Pretty much about to say just that. So the Yankees did not have a second or a fifth round pick due to the signing of free agent Garrett Cole. So Wells really needs to have an impact. Otherwise, this becomes a wasted draft because the guy that the Yankees took in the third round, and I don't even remember his name, Halver, I think his last name was. He's regarded as like a utility type, kind of a do everything, I don't even want to say like DJ LeMahieu was last year because I don't think the kid will wind up being nearly as good as DJ LeMahieu, but that was their third round pick. So that's not necessarily an impact guy. That's a guy who they see as being kind of a role player for them. So if Wells doesn't work out, then the 2020 draft for the Yankees will wind up as being looked back at as a disaster. So, we'll see what happens. And there were surprises in the first round. I won't go into them, but there were more than a couple after Spencer Torkelson was taken number 1 by the Detroit Tigers. But fun.
Well, one thing about
something for people to watch, and a good time.
And one thing about the draft, brother, if correct me if I'm wrong, since this was I just dropped my headphone here. Okay. Since this was a made for primetime event, is the draft normally during the day, but moved to the night?
This is the normal time that they've had it for the last few years anyway. They've turned it into a television event,
right?
But like I said before, the problem with that is you usually have teams playing. So baseball fans are going to watch baseball. They're not going to watch the draft. Right. So unless you do your draft and make it an off day for the entire league,
which you don't do.
It's you could, but
you're not going.
Do you want to? No. But do you? And I'm sure the general managers probably wouldn't mind that because they have, obviously the draft is their focus for those few days and even the days leading up to it. But, how do you make it the viewing event that you want to make it if you have your main product competing against it?
Right. And like I said, people don't watch college baseball the way they watch football and basketball. So
anyway, brother, it's not televised like those.
I know that.
Televised the College World Series, but that's it.
That's about it.
You get a taste of some of these guys, but that's all.
Also, brother, we were talking about Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer. I have to give them credit for, first of all, they're going to start up July 8th. Second of all, they're not. Now, mind you, it's a different league. It's the number 5 league in sports in the United States.
Some would say number 4, brother.
Hockey? Come on, hockey's better.
You might say it's better, but what about the numbers? What do the numbers say, brother?
The numbers say that the NHL contract with the NBC is much better than MLS's contracts.
Well,
anyway,
I don't know about the ratings.
I don't know about the ratings, but anyway, what they're doing fits more into soccer in general terms, and the fact that they're going to have a tournament. They're going to have a big tournament, and that's how they're going to determine their league winner. And it's not going to be a super long tournament, but it reminds me of many ways of the World Cup, but within the United States, in the sense that you're going to have all these teams in it, and is it one and out, brother, or is it?
No, but I like your very sagacious observation, brother. Very good. But you are 100% correct in that regard.
Thank you.
That MLS is setting up. They're calling it the MLS is back tournament. I really think they should have worked on the name a little bit more, but whatever. But yes, all 26 MLS teams will participate in this competition.
Right.
And all of these games will be held at the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex at the Walt Disney World Resort, which is just outside of Orlando, Florida. But you can't go, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But they're putting a situation together where there will be 5 4-team divisions and 1 6-team division. They had to do that because there's 15 teams in each conference. So they actually moved, I think it's Memphis, into the Eastern Conference, and they made one of the divisions is going to be 6 teams instead of 4.
Okay.
But the tournament, each group stage will consist of each team playing the other teams in its group. So it'll be 3 matches, then followed by a knockout stage. So they play 3 matches. Those 3 matches will count in the league standings, but they will also be separately counted in your group standings, like my brother said, in terms of just like a World Cup. So you will have a round of 16 that moves on from there, right? And then they will play elimination matches. I'm trying to remember how they did it. Yeah, but
will it be the 2-game thing that I hate in MLS?
I don't know. I'm trying to.
Okay, because that would.
Trying to read really quickly here, but I don't. I mean, part of the problem for MLS is they shut down their season on March 12th. Their regular season was 2 games old at that point.
Right. They start up They start at the beginning of March. It's not. They're pretty quick with their startup, and they should
have started earlier.
They go to the end of October, or is it November still?
November probably. Yeah, but November was what it was last year. Yeah, here it is. The tournament will consist of the group stage, like we said, 3 matches. Then that will be followed by a knockout stage. So that's 1 match is the knockout stage.
Okay, good.
There's no specifics on that here. And then the final of the tournament will be played on August 11th. So, that's you're going to have the top 2 teams from each group will advance, plus the 4 best third place finishers will be the teams that are the round of 16.
Right, and this is actually pretty good. It's going to make a quick season. The intensity of watching the games are going to be. It reminds me of the '99 strike season in the NBA, where they had 48 games, and the Knicks ended up being number 8 in the Eastern, and they went to the finals. So, I think you're going to see that type of intensity. Actually, this could help the MLS, brother, because of that intensity. The fact that the games are going to be closer together. Is going to, I think, help draw interest to the games
in more ways than that, brother. Because they're going to have 3 games a day, and one of those games is going to start at 9:00 in the morning. So that makes it even more like the World Cup. Because
right,
I mean, when last World Cup and when it was played in where was it played? I don't remember. But we had games in the morning. And then there's going to be a 9 a.m. game, there's going to be a game in the early evening, and then there's going to be a game in the late evening. So you're going to have soccer on most of the day. And as of right now, really, MLS is going to get eyeballs that Major League Baseball should have been getting.
Right.
But now all people are going to have to watch is soccer.
Right.
And that's going to be for at least a couple of weeks. Or at least it seems like that anyway, the way baseball is dragging their heels on this. So, from that standpoint, Major League Soccer has done a good job here, and credit to the league, credit to the Players Association for understanding that, hey, we need to get out there, and this is a great opportunity for our league to maybe capture some new fans, because they're not, the only other option they have to watch sports is the Korean Baseball Association.
Right, and I think it's a great idea. We haven't heard anything about the women's league, have you?
They're actually going to start up before the men. The NWSL is actually going to be the first league back. I don't remember off the top of my head what the first game is, but I want to say July 3rd. It's a few days before Major League Soccer. I know that, and I know that they've been touting it as being the first league to come back. So credit to the women as well on that one. But it seems like soccer is the sport that's leading the way in this country. And how often can we say that?
Well, they also have the least amount of games. I mean, football will have the least amount, but will there be a second wave? In October, like we've been told. So they're getting out by August. They can wait to see what happens and actually wait till next year. So by doing this while reducing their games, there'll be a more intense period of watching these games, and I think that's very important for soccer and just in sports in general. And I think that's gonna help them out a lot.
Yeah, so, and like I said, having that early morning game, I think is going to be big for them, because if people are still sitting around and not really doing much, well, hey, you're flipping through some channels or whatever, and here's a live soccer game. Look at this.
Right,
and then you have games on at night, so fans will be able to watch whenever they want, pretty much.
That's true. And what about the Premier League, brother?
Premier League starts up on Wednesday, brother. They are back. They're just about ready to play here. The real season will resume on Friday when my Tottenham Hotspur faces Manchester United at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which will be empty. None of its 66,000 plus seats will be filled. The Premier League hasn't played, brother, in 3.5 months due to the coronavirus, and they will be returning to empty stadiums because that's the protocol right now. So. Because of that, Tottenham has actually been training in the empty stadium to prepare for what will be a very different environment. Usually the home stadium is quite loud, and they built it to be quite loud, actually. Spurs and Manchester United, to me, should be the biggest game of this weekend back. I know Arsenal is playing Manchester City on Wednesday. Not a big game because Arsenal is Arsenal, basically. But Tottenham desperately needs to win this game. They will be playing 9 more games. Spurs need to win probably at least to try to move into the top 4 and regain a Champions League spot. Your Liverpool, brother, could clinch the title this weekend with a win over their arch rival and the team they share a town with, Everton.
Are they? Is Premier League cutting their season a little bit, or what are they doing?
I don't believe so. There are 9 games left. I'm not sure how they're going to do it in terms of the schedule and the time off after the season and the start of next season. Because I know, as you have mentioned many times, short off season for either MLS or Premier League. You need a sit down. You need to relax for a minute or two. Well, that's what they've been doing for the last 3.5 months, bro.
Yeah, but that's not by choice. It's not like this. Well, it's.
I mean, that for a lot of teams, that's the good part of it. I mean, for my Spurs, 3.5 months is enough that Harry Kane is now healthy. He had torn a hamstring, had surgery. They thought he was going to miss pretty much all of the rest of the season, but now here we are with 9 games left. Harry Kane's 100% healthy. Heung-min Son is 100% healthy. Steven Bergwijn is 100% healthy. All of these guys were out when the season was suspended, and now they are all healthy, and we got an offense again. And Harry Kane was the one that said, "Hey, we got to win at least 7 or 8 of these 9 games to have a shot at the top 4." I believe him. He's right.
Well, and also, one thing about the Premier League, it's got contracts with different networks here in the States. So many times they're airing it live, which throws off watching, but it's also a little different. When you wake up at 9 in the morning on a Saturday and it's a 2:00 game in Great Britain, you're like, hey, that's not so bad, better than cartoons or something.
Well, or even earlier. So, I mean, there are games that start at 7:00 here in the morning.
Right. So it doesn't. It's a fun thing.
That's New York. I mean, think about what it is in California. It's 4:00 in the morning in California.
You wouldn't even go to sleep. You would just stay.
I wouldn't. I would just hang out and keep the beer flowing.
Okay, brother. One more thing before we get out of here. Big Ed is coming up next at 10:00. We should say the Gold Show, playing the songs you know and love, but you don't really hear on the radio as much. And Big Ed is great what he does. The last thing we're going to talk about, brother, a shocking thing in NASCAR. with everything going on in our world, with cops putting knees on people's heads and stuff, NASCAR has banned the Confederate flag on their tracks, which means that if you are a driver and you have a Confederate flag on your logo or something, you can't have that. This is kind of a shocking thing. Let's be honest. NASCAR, as much as it's popular in the North, it's huge in the South.
It's a way of life in the South, yeah.
And you know, the Confederate flag in many cases is part of the Southern tradition, so to speak.
The heritage.
Heritage, as they like to say. The fact that they took it out, at least with among the drivers and the ownership teams, I guess, is, to me, an incredible thing. I mean, there's been a lot of movement to get rid of Confederate statues or to rename bases in the South that are named after Confederate generals. But this, to me, I was shocked when I read NASCAR. That was NASCAR's decision. And you know, NASCAR is like Major League Baseball. You know, it's their ownership teams and their drivers. And, you know, you sort of have to listen to it. It's part of the rules. I was shocked at this, brother.
Yeah, I was stunned by it. No, I was stunned at the expediency of it all. You know, Bubba Wallace, who was the lone black driver in the NASCAR's 3 national series, he made a call for the sanctioning body to ban all Confederate flags at racetracks, and the organizations did that 2 days after he made the call. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast it happened.
Right.
But this is as much about the fans as the owners. I don't think it's an issue. I really don't. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Yankee and I don't know much about the South, and I'm not going to sit here and say I do. But I think it's about more about the NASCAR culture, and not seeing all of these good old boys with their Confederate flags, and I still don't understand why they celebrate the losing side, but whatever.
Well, not that I'm supporting it, but the story goes, well, it's our Southern heritage. It reminds me, I don't know if you ever watched the Cleveland Show.
Heard of it, maybe watched it once. It's a cartoon for anybody who doesn't know.
Right, the Cleveland Show. One day, Rollo, who's Cleveland's stepson, sees one of Cleveland's friends has the Confederate flag on his roof, and he's all upset. But at the end of the show, he finds out that he doesn't support the Confederacy. He supports Dukes of Hazzard's General Lee car. So it was so stupid. But there is that mentality in part of the South. And they're not going to allow Confederate flags inside the stadiums either. But, if you go to a NASCAR event, it's all about tailgating as much as going to the race. Right. And I bet you do see some Confederate flags still
you'll see these people, they refuse to accept the fact that they want to talk about heritage and tell that lie as much as they want, but the fact of the matter is you'll see flags in the parking lots, you'll see flags hanging from cars, you'll still see Confederate flags on the property, but there won't be any once you go inside the track, and I mean, to me that's good, because if you want your sport, and yes, I'm calling auto racing a sport.
It is a sport.
If you want your sport to be inclusive for everybody and to grow bigger and stronger, well, why are you allowing this racist symbol to be celebrated in your tracks? Because now you're talking about a significant portion of the population that views the Confederate flag as completely as a racist symbol and doesn't want to be anywhere near it or support an organization that supports that sort of symbol. Well, so now NASCAR has addressed that, and hopefully we'll make the sport better for everybody.
Well, one thing I think they won't do is I don't think they're going to be patrolling the tailgating section and say, please take that down. I cannot see
unlikely.
Highly unlikely. There's a certain freedom of speech, even if you don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think they can enforce it.
If you have a flag like that, So you'll probably see it in the tailgating thing, but since it won't be inside, that it's half and half on that one, and I think that's the way it's going to be. Like I said, I was shocked that they took 2 days to do it.
Shocked and happy, brother. I was pleased. I mean, NASCAR had actually considered doing that a few years ago,
right?
And there was some backlash, and they backed off of it. But this was quick and done. And hey, we're making a decision, and you don't like it too bad.
It was when North Carolina got rid of their state flag that had the Confederate flag in it. So that was part of it, and then they were going to do it. They decided not to. But right now, if you're going to do it, it's the time to do it.
Yes.
So anyway,
100%.
brother, one more thing. We got like a half a minute here.
Yes.
The Mets, according to Jeffy Wilpon, have 5 people interested in buying the Mets. He would not say who they are, but
tell me who. A-Rod, and who?
Yeah, I know.
Is J-Lo count as the second one, even though they're the same group? I don't know.
And Cohen doesn't count because he said he's not buying it up. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure
Jeff Wilpon's lying.
Yeah, well, one thing about whatever deal happens, Jeff will be gone with the family, and he can just live off his father's money. Good. Anyway, you've been listening to From the Press Box right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. I'm Rob Leonard. He's Tim Leonard. We'll see you next week with more sports.